writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspirations for growing your self-publishing business. We're your hosts. I'm Joni.
And I'm Stephanie. So this week on the podcast, we talked to PC and Kristin Cass, a mother-daughter duo who are both USA Today bestselling authors and New York Times bestselling authors.
This was such a fun interview. It's hard to know how these things are going to work when we're interviewing two people and we're in 4 different locations, but it ended up being so good. Kristin and PC are super fun, entertaining. They have a great relationship. They talked a lot about their writing journey. There's a good little backstory as to how Kristin ended up writing with her mother when her mom was asking for her team perspective on various characters. So I love that.
They also kind of released a popular series, The House of Night, at the epitome of vampire craze, which was interesting to hear their perspective on paranormal romance and the YA genre. Now that's kind of getting cycled in again in recent years.
Yeah, it was a great interview. We hope you enjoyed as much as we did.
Thank you, Kristin and PC, for joining us on the podcast today.
Yay, thank you for having us.
Very excited to be here.
So to kick it off, can you tell our listeners a bit about yourselves and then how you got your start in publishing?
Well, I'm PC Cast, and I've been published for, probably 20-ish years now, maybe a little bit more. And what I'm best known for at this time is the House of Night books. They were my overnight success, which means that Chosen, the 3rd book in the House of Night series, was my first book to make a list, and it changed my career. And that was also my 18th book published. So when people are like, it was an overnight success, that night was 18 years long. Yes. No, not years long, books long. With a small regional press in Oklahoma. I had been teaching high school and decided that I was going to start my master's degree and start a novel at the same time. And whichever worked out best, that's the one I would finish. And I've not finished my master's yet. So it was the book part that worked out well. I audited a class at, what's that place called, Kristin? OSU Tulsa.
OSU.
Yeah. And it was a creative writing class with a fantastic professor who later has become one of my best friends, Teresa Miller. She was also executive director of the Oklahoma Poets and Writers Association. And she introduced me to the publisher of the small regional press, who immediately published my first book for a weighty advance of $250. Yes, indeedy.
You're very fancy.
Right? And that book, though, shocked me, and I'm sure that publisher too, by winning several national awards and getting a lot of attention. That book, it got me an agent, basically, and then my first contract with Berkeley, and everything took off from there after 18 books. Yeah.
I'm Kristin Cass. Phyllis's, or PC, I call her Phyllis because she's my mom and that's her name. Phyllis's daughter. And I started editing the House of Night series when I was 19. And that's, really what started my writing career is my mom coming out into the living room one day and saying, "Mama's precious." And when she says it like that, I know that there's something that she wants. It's not just her being real nice. And so I just waited, and she said, "How would you like to co-author a book with Mama?" And I said, "It would be Kristin Cast with PC Cast." And she was like, "No, it would be PC Cast with Kristin Cast." And at 19, sitting on the couch watching The Real World, I was like, "Am I going to be famous?" And she was like, "Sure, yeah, that's exactly how it works." Having, published all of these books and not being
totally not famous
and still being a teacher. And I was like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, totally. I'll do it. That sounds like so easy." And then we worked on the first House of Night book for a year because it's not super easy. And that's what started my writing career. And at the end of the House of Night series, I did a similar thing that PC did, and I was like, well, I can go back to college, which that's terrible, or I can write a novel on my own. And so I just started doing them both at the same time, and I'm no longer in college. So that's fantastic because it sucks there.
Following in mom's footsteps.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
PC, what made you decide to approach Kristin and ask her to co-write?
Oh, this is great. I was back in my, we'll put this in quotes, office then, which was, we had like a 1,200 square foot, maybe 1,200 square feet of luxurious condo space. And my office was a very small plywood desk that, no, it was particle board desk that was like smashed in next to my bed. And I put this lovely screen that I found at a garage sale somewhere between my bed and my, quote, office. So I was back there, and I had been teaching for probably about a decade. I've been teaching high school and also writing at the same time. And I thought when I started this YA book, I thought I would have zero trouble finding a YA voice because I'm surrounded by teenagers all the time. But terrifyingly enough, when I started writing, my 1970s teenager came out. She was groovy too.
Oh, no.
So I would be sitting back there, and like Kristin said, she was watching The Real World out in the living room, which our luxurious, barely 1,200 square foot condo, it was easily accessible from my office. So I would scream back at her. I'd go, "Chicken!" because her initials are KFC. And some of us have called her Chicken for a long time. I was like, "Chicken! So when I was a teenager and someone got drunk, we called it shit-faced. What do you call it now?" And she'd go, "Wasted, Phyllis." And I'd be like, "Thank you." That happened over and over. And all of a sudden I was like, you know what, this would be so much easier if I could just write. And then she would look at my dialogue and make sure that I didn't make Zoe sound like a 40-something-year-old disgruntled school teacher, because that's who was writing her, or a 1970s student. Although, Kristin, you know what? I thought for a moment back then, maybe I should just change the setting to the 70s. Everything could be very groovy then.
Oh my God. I'm so glad that wasn't what happened.
So that's when I came out and asked Kristin to help me with that. And, you know, I thought I was lying to her and said, no, I was like, sure, we'll be famous. And then the first time we were on tour that someone recognized us in the airport, Kristin's like, "I told you." Okay.
That's hilarious. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about how YA fiction has changed and basically gotten better since we were all reading it. How did your experiences as a teacher and also Kristin's experiences tie into how you write about teenagers?
Oh man, I can't imagine trying to write YA without knowing teenagers really well. When I started writing House of Night, I was determined to do one thing as well as I could besides just, you know, write the book. And that was to reflect the kids' language, their topics, just who they were in the House of Night. So it really helped me immersed around teenagers. And that's what I did. That's why when people pick up the House of Night today, they're like, "Oh my God, it sounds like the early 2000s. It's because it was. And
Yeah,
then
we
the kids
just being honest.
right? And then the kids just took on a life of their own. So their language, their vernacular pretty much stayed the same. But yeah, that was something that I wanted to make sure I did that I didn't see a lot of. Mm-hmm. Kids really sounding like kids. And I got hassled a lot for it. I had a whole lot of mommies who were, "You're teaching my child to curse." I'm like, "No, honey, no, no." That ship sailed a long time ago. Okay. Have you never walked down a high school hallway before in your life? And then I also really wanted to deal, and we still, Chris and I in our new series that we actually do co-author together, Sisters of Salem. I really think it's important that YA authors deal with sex in a healthy manner. And because what I found in my classroom, and I had a library in my classroom, and every Friday was novel day, and they read basically whatever they wanted to read on that Friday during class. What I found is that kids could take home, and I had parents have to approve whatever they read too. They had to acknowledge, yes, I know my kid's reading this book. My kids never had any trouble getting any kind of book approved to read that was filled with violence. It could be filled with violence. It could be the worst, horrible, like scary ass Stephen King or zombie or whatever, and they were fine with it. But let them take home a romance or let them take home a book that deals with sexuality in a realistic or unrealistic manner, and they would freak out. So I also want to make sure that we dealt with that in a healthy manner, and we do in Sisters of Salem as well. And I see that changing. I see that changing and shifting and it has over the last decade plus. It's changing.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is changing, and I think it is getting a lot better. We've talked to a couple of authors that co-write. I'm interested, how is your co-writing process for this most recent series? Do you write together? Do you pass it back and forth?
With Sisters of Salem, which we do co-write together, before we start writing, we have lots of meetings with our developmental editor who kind of helps us both, we both have, especially at the very beginning of the series, once you've written a book in a series, you kind of are on a track, where you want to go somewhat. But before we started the very first series, we both had ideas about where we gave our editor like a few sentences, a paragraph about this world. And so we had to go from this paragraph to how is this going to be a trilogy? So we sat down and we both had our own ideas, and we fleshed those out, and we created an outline, a 3-act outline. Mm-hmm. And then we had to break that 3-act outline down to a chapter by chapter outline. And we each chose a point of view character. It's about twin sisters, Mercy and Hunter, and I write Hunter's point of view, and Phyllis writes Mercy's point
Lovely
of view.
Mercy.
And if Mercy was at the forefront of that chapter or had a certain part of the story to tell, Phyllis writes that chapter, and I write those from Hunter's perspective. And we go back and forth, but we have an outline, and we know what we're writing, and that way neither one of us can just go rogue and kind of do our own thing, which will change the entire story. Mm-hmm. We do have a thing that we're like, oh, we need to add this. We have a call before anybody writes anything, and we say, I need to add this, but it's going to change, X, Y, and Z in your chapters. Is that okay? It's all about communication, and for us, having a very settled upon plan before we even start.
Yeah, and we also have other points of view that...
Yeah, like bad guys and stuff.
Yeah, and some secondary characters, and we do the same thing there. It tends to be who we see and who we connect with best, so that's how we do that. And like, for instance, we've just finished book 2 in our Sisters of Salem. Mm-hmm. Sisters of Salem series. A lot of S's. And Kristin and I were writing away on it, passing it back and forth. And we got to Act 3 and realized it just wasn't going to work. So we had a big phone call. The two of us, we brainstormed again, and we re-outlined all of Act 3. Mm-hmm. But that was also before either one of us had written anything. It was like, ooh, this doesn't feel right to me. This feels like a dead end or something. So then we brainstormed. We call it Sandwich Day. Usually there are sandwiches involved, too, in the brainstorming.
Do you guys use any tools when you're writing that maybe authors might be helpful to know about?
I like cowrite, ohwrite.com. I think it's fairly new. Well, it's fairly new to me. I have multiple author friends, and one of them sent me the link, and it's a way to do sprints all together. So you just create a profile, and it's free, and you go in and you make your own room, or you can join a global room, and they have a global countdown clock, or you could like create your own timer, and you can each write, and you see in the bar next to the screen that you're writing in each person who's in the room with you and how many words they've written. And then every 100 words, you get this little star. And then when you hit 1,000 words, you get a big star. And then you get little stars until you hit another 1,000. That's another big star. It's just very rewarding.
That's why you like it.
Yeah,
She loves her some stickers. And that from the time she was a little girl. Yeah.
And the people you're writing with see that. And there's like a little chat feature in it. And you can motivate each other. You can't ever see what the other person is writing. So you don't have to worry about like someone clicking on your name and seeing your whole manuscript or something. But I absolutely love it. My friends and I write in there every day. It's fantastic. I've been an author my entire adult life, so I've never had another career. So I haven't ever had the ability to be in any kind of building working with other people who are working on things similar to what I'm working on. And it's a super awesome feeling that I can see what everyone is, like how much they've accomplished, and it motivates me. And it's just it's really nice. I like it. It's a community when we are all isolated.
That's really fun. We need to share that. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before.
Right? It's awesome. I guess a husband created it for his wife because she wanted a way to do sprints with her friends and where they could all see what was happening. So
I would not get any work done. I would like be staring at everyone's little stars and going, I wonder what they're writing. And I'd be making up a whole story in my head about what someone else was writing. I don't use anything. I'm just old school. I just light my candles, have my tea. I write on a tread desk. I walk and write. But
oh, that's cool.
Really? Yeah.
It saves your back and your butt. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love them. I've been doing it since 2008.
Don't think I could type on a treadmill, but
no, it's not. It's different than a treadmill. It's way quieter and it's slow, but you can, like, I usually write at almost, I'm walking at like 0.9 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's super slow. It doesn't make any noise.
It doesn't make any noise. And you just walk. My assistant is an artist too. And she has said she doesn't think she could draw on it, but it's almost like smooth and quiet enough that she considers it, that it's like, I wonder if I could draw on it. Yeah, I like it a lot, but that's it. I just have to be like in my office, know the people around, dog sleep music on, Scotty dogs everywhere, my Maine Coon around, and the aroma of dog farts.
Magical time. Do you guys write every day?
Yeah. Well, I write Monday through Friday, and I'm fortunate enough to have a nanny who still comes over and takes care of my 2-year-old during the day so that I can do my job. And I only work on the weekends if I have some kind of deadline or something crazy's happening. It's hard to, as you guys know, as a lot of people know right now, it's hard to have that clear line between your work life and your home life when your work life is at home. And so I try to make it a point that like at 4:00 every day, unless something crazy is happening, right? Yeah, my dog agrees with me. At 4:00 every day, my work ends and my personal life begins. She's real excited about it. It's not quite 4:00 yet, Grace.
I was going to say, what's Grace Kelly's doing?
When do you work, Phyllis?
I work at night, and I usually start work around 7, 8 o'clock and get done anywhere between midnight and 2.
But you'll work like every day.
It depends on where we are in a manuscript, or it depends on where I am in a manuscript. If I'm at the beginning, I can't write every single day, but I'm usually making notes, and it's like it's percolating. And, I struggle then to write, like, at the beginning, I struggle to write 5 pages in 4 or 5 hours. But by the time we get to the middle of it, I'm knocking out a chapter a night easily. And sometimes, because I always check in with Kristin. It's like my habit. Before I go to bed, I text her and I'm like, 16 pages, yeah!
Yeah, I wake up every morning to her being like, I wrote half a book last night. I'm like, okay, hooray.
I'm a little faster than Kristin.
You're
but
so faster than I am.
Yeah, well, but Kristin's just written a couple books and I've written like 40. So, but it depends on where I am in a book. Towards the end of a book, it's every day, and for protracted amounts. At the beginning, it's just not ready yet. It's a lot less than that.
So, Kristin, we saw on your website that you have a series called Scarlet, which is a serialized photo mini story that you release on Instagram each week. And I was just wondering what gave you the idea to release a story on Instagram? Because I personally haven't seen that before from anyone.
Well, thank you for the question.
No, people should check it out. The photos are beautiful.
I believe people should too. Find
We'll
it
have a
on
link.
Instagram at Podcast Author. Plug. So my publicist and my agent both told, I don't like social media. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook. I'm on Instagram because there are pretty pictures on Instagram. But if I didn't have to be on anything, I would just sit in my house quietly by myself. My agent and my publicist both told me that I had to participate in social media because apparently it's part of my job.
So did her mother.
Yeah, I was outnumbered and I'm like, tried to make a case against it and everyone was like, no, you have to do it. And so I decided to do it the way I wanted to do it. And I love telling stories. And if I was going to be forced into being in the world of social media, I was going to use it to tell a story. And I also really love like pinup, like murderous style fashions and movies and books. So that's where Scarlet came from. She's very much, she's a sultry assassin. And she likes to seduce her prey and then murder them gruesomely. And
Fascinating.
yes, so I decided that every few months she would tell a story about her next victim. And right now she is seducing the CEO of a cigarette company because smoking is not good for you. She's going to kill him pretty soon. It's going to be great.
She's really a superhero.
She really is, though, like a modern day superhero. She can have fun if she wants to, and she does.
So how do you, these are full-on photo shoot. How does this work? Do you have people modeling for you? Are you a photographer?
No, I'm at Scarlet. That's me. And I am lucky enough to know a super great photographer. And my son's nanny, before she was with our family, she was a makeup and hairstylist and the director of a salon. And so she's my art director. I fell into meeting these awesome women and all three of us storyboarded together. And they really, they're the ones who set up exactly what everything should look like. I don't understand how to see a story in photographs. That's not my strength. Obviously, as a prose author, that's not a thing I do. And I definitely can't take a picture to save my life. So they really helped me develop that. And then we kind of scouted a location in Portland and had this awesome guy, male model, come in. And yeah, it was the three ladies had a baby, and it was Scarlet.
They're very fabulous, very Mad Men. The photos are gorgeous.
You.
Yeah, they are gorgeous.
That's exactly what we were going for.
Oh, yes.
We'll have a link to it on the blog for anyone interested to see what it looks like. What about you, PC? Do you use social media?
I am in charge of the Facebook. I have the House of Night, official House of Night page, the official PC Cast author page, and then my personal page. And that's where I do most of my social media, stuff. I also have a Twitter account where I mostly just talk about how much I loathe and despise the carpetbagger squatting in our White House. Some people, my fans find me there and they're like, hey, hi. Oh my God, I just read the latest House of Night book and it's great. And I'm like, thanks, vote.
Make sure to vote. Don't forget. Were you ever hesitant to talk about politics on your, I guess it's your social media platform. You can do what you want. Did you feel like you maybe should keep it to one social media, which I guess you've kind of done?
Yes, actually, all this changed horrible 4 years ago in November. Before that, I always voted. I'm a veteran. I served in the United States Air Force and have been voting since I was 18. And although I voted and was, paid attention to politics, I wasn't on social media about politics. And then that orange thing happened. Mm-hmm. And before it happened, I posted before the election. Do you guys remember that video that was going around that the Hillary campaign did that had a whole bunch of people singing Fight Song.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a beautiful video. And I put it on my personal page, and I think I put it on PC Cast author page too. And I also House and I think I put it on all 3 pages. It's the first time I'd ever done any political post at all. And back then I didn't even see it as political. I was like, this is such a cool video, which is what I said. This is a cool video. And I remember being just attacked. I was called the C word, I was just swarmed by trolls and by Trump supporters. And it freaked me out. I remember I called Kristin, and Kristin was like, well, maybe you should just put that on your personal page and not the other pages, so you don't have to deal with it on there. And so I started doing that then. I post political things on my personal page. Author page and House and I page is almost always about work. But I've gone from being intimidated and freaked out by ignorance and hate and trolls to taking a very firm, very loud stance against them. So that no longer intimidates me or scares me. And I'm like, shut up, go away, do some fact checking, and grow some damn compassion.
That's awesome. And it's good to, like, you have to be able to set the boundary yourself, right? And if you know that you can handle it, then...
Mm-hmm. And then if it's important to you, I feel like more people should, I mean, you don't have to, but I feel like if you're really passionate about it, you should be making the statement in like personal, professional channels.
Yeah. And my books have always been matriarchal. They've always been inclusive. And I don't know why a Trump supporter would read me because I stand for everything they are against. So, and yes, I make a very loud stand now and always will.
Do you experience a lot of censorship with your books? I know a lot of YA authors that write about any kind of magic or, like you were talking about, sex, anything like that. Often their books are censored by parents, librarians, schools. Have you experienced any of that?
Oh, absolutely. But censorship implies that they can take things out of. All they can do is ban my books. They can't take anything out of them. The House of Night was the most banned book series in the Texas public school libraries. For many years, they had some kind of clairvoyance because they were banning books I hadn't even written yet because of their content.
Wow.
Congratulations.
I know, that's an honor.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel fortunate that at Macmillan we have a very strong editor, and they have said for many years, write what you want to write the truth, and we'll publish it. So I don't think about that stuff at all. I write the story, and I know Kristin doesn't either. We write the story that we want to tell. And we don't think about, I'm writing for teenagers, because, I taught teenagers for 15 years, and you don't talk down to them. You don't lower your standards. If anything, you raise your standards. And no, we get banned, but we don't get censored. Yes.
Wow, and there's a difference between like writing like gratuitous sex and violence.
Yeah.
Like just because you want to fill a book with some crazy stuff, and being mindful and respectful of different people. Yeah. And I think that when people think about censorship in books and just writing whatever you want to write, sometimes the being mindful of other human beings is left out. I think that those are 2 very different things. Like when you're writing about sex and drugs and violence, and then when you're writing about human beings, I mean, those are just 2. Like, I feel like you have to weigh those differently. And so when we are writing like sex and drugs and violence, we want to be honest and not overly graphic for the sake of it. But when we're writing about human beings, we are very mindful, and we have conversations about that, and we talk about those different people and how we should represent people, and if we are the people to be doing so. So that is talked about at length.
Yeah, that absolutely. Yeah, like when we wrote The Disasters together, one of our characters was a lovely trans teenager. And I hired an awesome trans woman who had sandwich day with me. We did sandwich days. And she came over a bunch. And I wrote the Charlotte part. Charlotte was my trans character's name. I wrote the Charlotte parts and gave her the manuscript and said, I don't have any ego in this. I want to represent correctly. And I had to rewrite everything.
At least she was honest, though.
She was great. She was fantastic. And I love that she corrected me, and I love that she taught me so much. It was a fantastic experience.
That's really cool. Do you typically work with, in this case where you're working with, I guess, a sensitivity reader, was it just one person, or did you have a few different people that you bounced ideas off?
I had a few other people I bounced ideas off, but we all paid close attention to my trans consultant.
Okay.
Yes.
Sensitivity readers at the beginning of the YA, when the YA genre really became a thing around, Harry Potter, Twilight, House of Night time, that sensitivity readers weren't a thing. They, nobody thought about that kind of stuff. It was just kind of like, you can write who and whatever you want to, and just do it the way you feel like it's supposed to be done, and we're just going to publish it. It's a book, and that's fine. And the world was very small back then. At least it felt like it was in comparison to having your eyes open today. So we have only recently explored the possibility of having a sensitivity reader, because it used to not even be available.
This kind of leads into my next question. So your House of Night series was released at the height of the the peak of the vampire craze, and kind of like the YA getting more popular and more books being published in the genre. I'm just wondering, what kind of trends or changes have you seen in the YA market over the past 20 years?
It's been really interesting to watch it grow. I think it all of course, it started with Potter, but more than that, the vampire craze had lots of authors who I don't think would have considered YA, considering YA. And I think a lot of that has been very good for the genre. I hate genre politics. I hate labels and, oh, that's a girl book, that's a guy book, that's a YA book, that's a mystery, because I read across genres and always have. I've seen that happen in YA. Lots of different types of authors and lots of different genres writing in YA, and I think that's fantastic. I love it. Right now, the zeitgeist is witchy books, it seems.
Yeah, there's always in YA, I think more than in other adult genres, you see the zeitgeist, like the vampire thing. And then there was a huge like fantasy thing where authors created their own worlds with these long names. And I'm not a fantasy reader. I don't know if you could tell by that comment.
I am. And a fantasy writer.
It sounded real negative though.
Also just the dystopian thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
And, so I think that is a lot more apparent in YA than anywhere else. And I don't really know why, because young people are people and will read whatever they want to read. So I don't know why the industry picks a thing and is like, this is the thing. We're going to publish 10 books a year about this one thing. We're going to force everybody to read it and say that it's a trend. The trends are a lot more apparent in YA than anywhere else, I feel.
No, I agree with that.
I think it's because kids are so vocal. I think that when they really like something, that's a whole like avalanche of feeling, and they're a lot more vocal about it than like when Outlander was first released, and a lot of us were reading it, and we're like adult women, and we're like, oh my God, it's so good, I love it, but you don't get the like crazy vocal passion for it that teenagers will do when they get really excited about something. That's why I think that it's easier to see trends and zeitgeists and that kind of stuff in YA. I love that about YA too.
Do you think the standards are higher for YA? I feel like because kids are so discerning, and they just, like, if something isn't good, they don't go for it. And yeah. I feel like there's so much really great YA.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
Necessarily if the writing standards are higher. I think that it's more about the story and the people who populate the world than the writing abilities.
Maybe just that there's not really any space for mediocrity in YA, like it just won't do well.
And there's an honesty element too. Teenagers will call out liars in a second.
Yeah.
That's really a thing. They know when they're being spoken down to. They know when they're being patronized and patted on the head and, in prose. And they're very vocal about that. They'll be like,
I've noticed that, like, even this year, two of my big YA books that came out when I was in high school, like The Hunger Games and Twilight, they both had new books come out. So it's been, like, nostalgic for me, like, oh, I read these 10 years ago. But I'm just wondering, where do you guys see publishing in the next 5 to 10 years?
I don't know what this is going to do to publishing, what the pandemic is going to do to publishing. It's going to be very interesting to see. I have no prediction for that.
Publishing doesn't evolve at the rate in which it needs to. So it's very hard to, like Phyllis said, have any kind of prediction about what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, because 5 to 10 years ago, things should have happened that still haven't happened. So will authors, all types of different authors, be treated better? We would hope so, but who knows? I mean, will books that represent more different types of people continue to be published even after this trend has ended? We would hope so, but who knows? I mean, they're very much a follow the money, but in a follow the money sort of way that was established in the 80s. Just, hopefully it advances, but I don't necessarily have a lot of optimism.
She knows. As a woman of color, she knows. Okay, so
what advice would you give to a younger woman, or anyone, someone young wanting to get into writing or publishing, with that in mind?
I feel very strongly that you have to tell the story that you want to tell, regardless of whether or not you see it on the shelves or feel like it will be purchased. We, as people who have been born on this planet with the gift of being able to write, I feel like it is our duty to represent that honestly and write books that need to be in the hands of young people. So that is my advice, is to don't think about it as what kind of commercial success can I gain from this, but think about it as what story do people need to hear right now.
And I completely agree with Kristin. To add to that, if you want to have a career as an author, you need to research the job of being an author as you would any other. Too many people put on those rose-colored glasses and they romanticize the career of being an author. And it's actually not very romantic, okay? I mean, I write in my pajamas and it's not a pinafore.
You two sound like you have so much fun.
Right?
You do.
Well, I do have a lot of fun, but you should have fun at your job. But, not understanding the job of an agent or an editor, there's no excuse for that. Not knowing how a manuscript becomes a book on the shelf. If you're going into that career, if that's what you want, why don't you know every aspect about that? But so many people do not. I mean, so many do not. So along with what Kristin said, write the book that you know people should read. People need to read. Understand how that book goes from your head, inside your head, to the shelves of Barnes & Noble.
That is excellent advice from both of you. We always like to finish by asking, what have you been loving lately? It can be books, movies, podcasts, anything that you've been enjoying.
I have this sunflower in my front yard that was put there by some bird, I think, because my boyfriend and I tilled this whole corner of our front yard and planted all these flowers and finally moved all of the toddler toys from the front yard to the backyard. And one day we had this tiny little plant and he was like, don't pull it. It might be a thing. And I kept taking pictures of it and putting it in my plant finder app. And it was like, it's a cucumber. And I was like, that's insane. And so it finally got bigger and now it's as tall as I am and it has 6 giant blooms on it. And every day I just stand next to it and stare at it and talk to it. So I'm that lady in the neighborhood.
You're supposed to talk to your plants.
You are. I know. I always tell how beautiful it is. And I feel like I look at all sorts of things that happen in the world, like messages from the universe. And right before, we've lived in this house for a year. And right before we left this house at our old house, we randomly had this sunflower that came and only had 1 bloom, but it came in front of our big window in front of our house before we left. And now we've been here a year and now there's this even bigger sunflower with even more giant sunflower heads all over it. And I just feel like it's this huge sign of prosperity and love and we are where we are supposed to be. And so right now I'm very obsessed and in love with the sunflower.
I love that.
I love that. Also,
And
we need some hope and light in sunflowers.
Yeah.
Well, this is bizarre, but Kristin, you were just saying that, and I have this weird sunflower on my patio. I have gardens on my patio. I have a couple decks, and my gardens are container gardens on the decks. And I have to show you next time you come over. I have just this little pot, and this weird plant started coming out of it. And my assistant and I were out gardening, and I was like, what is that? And she's like, it might be a sunflower. Let's just, because we didn't plant it, let's just see what happens. And it's blooming right now. It's huge. It's a sunflower too on my patio.
Universe.
It's the universe.
Giving you a sign.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have anything great like that. I'm going to be looking for plants now.
Seriously, I can't believe that. A bird planted it in both of your gardens.
Maybe it was the same bird. See? So,
Universe.
Just 2 final questions is that what can readers expect from you next? And then I was wondering if you could give a little update on your series, The House of Night, because it was optioned for a TV show, and what that process has been like.
We actually are doing on August 12th, and this video will be up on our websites and social media after August 12th. At August 12th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, we have a live Q&A with one of our producers, David Cormacon from DC TV, to answer questions about the House of Night TV show. We have a pilot script, and right before coronavirus, they were out, shopping it at networks, and then coronavirus happened, and so it kind of paused everything. But if there are any House of Night fans out there and they would like to see the House of Night TV show on a certain live streaming platform or station, reach out to those people and let them know, because we are on the hunt for a network right now. And what you can expect next from me, on October 13th, I have the first book in my new series coming out. It's called The Key to Fear. And I don't know if you can imagine this, but it's about a civilization set 50 years after a pandemic that was Dutch wipes out most of the population. So there are strict social distancing protocols in place, and a pharmaceutical company has taken over control of the world.
This is eerie.
My friends keep telling me to write something, happy, so that maybe I can change what's going on. But I did write this more than a year ago, so it wasn't my fault.
Yeah, it's on the shelf behind you. It is a real book. It is definitely predates the pandemic.
So that will be out October 13th.
Together, we have Sisters of Salem. Our first book, Spells Trouble, comes out June, right, Kristin?
Well, it's summer 2021.
Yeah. So they're going to tell us exactly when pretty soon. And we just finished, like we said earlier, we just finished the second book, and we're loving it big time. And weirdly enough, last winter, like November-ish, October, November-ish, I got this idea for an apocalypse novel, a very feminist. When I say feminist, I also mean really fun, a very matriarchal apocalypse novel with a group of high school teachers caught in the apocalypse. And I started writing it then. It's called Green. The working title is Green as Blood, and I'm almost done with it now. And it has actually been a really good experience to write apocalypse novel during an apocalypse, because I get to control this one.
It's very true.
That's coming in the future sometime too.
Okay,
is it a YA
for that?
or is
No, it's an adult. It's adult.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
And
Thank
you
you guys.
for fun.
It was great. We appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're looking for any information on how to grow your sales, visit kobowritinglife.com. And if you're looking for information about the cast or links to any of their books, we'll make sure we provide those in the show notes.
This episode was produced by Stephanie McGrath and Joni DePlacido. This episode was edited by Kelly Robothon. Music was provided by Tearjerker. Special thanks to Rachel Wharton for being our production assistant, and special thanks to PC and Kristin Cast for being guests on our episode. If you're ready to start your self-publishing journey today, sign up for free at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.